everyone, and welcome to Carmel Unfiltered. I'm Samantha Fulling, and this episode is a recap of the April 7th, 2026 budget work session. Now, this is not your typical Board of Education meeting. This is the kind of meeting where the district and the board sit down with the proposed budget and start picking it apart, line by line and number by number and question by question. This is where you hear the explanations for spending increases, the pushback on certain budget lines, the discussion over taxes, staffing, programs, reserves, and what may or may not still change before the budget goes to a public vote. Why am I doing this? Because budget work sessions are important, but let's be honest, they can also be painfully hard to follow, especially if you're not sitting there with a spreadsheet open and a working knowledge of school finance. They're long, they're technical, they repeat themselves, and sometimes one conversation about one budget code can go on forever. But if you want to understand what the district is prioritizing, how taxpayer money is being used, and what board members are actually challenging behind the scenes, this is where a lot of that happens. So this is my way of helping district stakeholders who can't be there, don't want to watch the full thing afterwards, or just want the important parts broken down into plain English. I'll give approximate timestamps throughout, so if there's a specific issue that you want to go back and watch in the actual meeting, it should be easier to find. I'll also link the full meeting below for convenience, but you can always find the board meetings on YouTube by searching Carmel CSD at Board of Education. So let's get into it. So the meeting opens with Board President Melissa Orser calling the meeting to order, and roll call was taken. Present at the start of the meeting were President Melissa Orser, Vice President John Curzio, Trustee Magliano, Trustee Wise, Trustee Jordy Douglas, and Trustee Michael Torpy were expected to join later, and Trustee Frank Grasso was expected to be absent. Then the meeting began with the Pledge of Allegiance. Around the 1 minute, 15-second mark, President Orser moved the meeting into the discussion of the proposed 2026-27 school year budget and turned the floor over to Superintendent Michael Plotkin. Superintendent Plotkin said that the budget theme this year is every student counts and every dollar matters. He said that the district is trying to balance support for students with sensitivity to taxpayers and the wider community. He also referenced the district's recent annual audit and said that over the last 3 years, the district's budgeting and fiscal practices had received the highest marks with no fiscal stress designation. He noted that one area flagged for improvement was voter participation and encouraged the public to come out and vote on May 19th. Around the 2 minute, 40-second mark, Superintendent Plotkin then outlined the district's 5 budget pillars. First, supporting student learning through curriculum, instruction, and resources directed toward student needs. Second, promoting equity and access through interventions, supports, and programming. Third, supporting safe operations, including facilities, repairs, transportation, technology, and utilities. Fourth would be fiscal sustainability, including what he described as creativity in building a plan that considered taxpayers. And fifth, community trust, which he said had been supported by repeated audit committees, board meetings, and public communication throughout the budget process. He also said the district would continue a public outreach effort, including presentations to community groups. Around the 4 minute, 30-second mark, Superintendent Plotkin then described the budget at a glance. He said the proposed budget is $152,963,237, which represents a 3.9% increase over the current year with a 0% tax increase. So plainly broken down, that means they are increasing their budget, but the plan is not to increase taxes or the burden to the general public. He said that the district had gone back to the drawing board to bring the proposal down to what he considered the most responsible number. He also said the district was being mindful of rising home assessments, household costs, and broader financial pressures on the community. Around the 6 minute, 20-second mark, Superintendent Plotkin then compared Carmel's proposal to other districts. He said that Carmel and Mahopac were the only districts shown in the presentation proposing a 0% tax increase, while other nearby districts were proposing tax increases above their calculated caps. Assistant Superintendent of Business Ken Silver added that the selected districts were averaging about a 3.8 budget increase and a 2.9% tax increase, while Carmel was proposing a 3.9% increase with no tax increase. Silver also clarified that the tax cap is not simply 2%. He said each district's cap is calculated each year, and that Carmel's calculated cap this year is 1.24%. He also noted that any district proposing to go above its tax cap would need a 60% supermajority for voter approval. Around the 8-minute, 50-second mark, Plotkin then reviewed state aid. He said state aid for the district is expected to total about $41.8 million, made up of transportation aid, foundation aid, building aid, excess cost aid, BOCES aid, high tax aid, and technology aid. He then explained that in order to keep the tax increase at 0%, the district is planning to use reserves strategically. He said the proposal includes about $3.9 million from reserve funds, including insurance reserve, health insurance reserve, repair reserve, capital improvements, retirement contribution reserve, accrued benefit liability reserve, debt service, and tax-related funding. He said the district's position was that this approach addresses operational needs while still protecting long-term fiscal health. Around the 10-minute, 40-second mark, Plotkin then summarized the main budget message. He said the proposal reflects a 3.9% budget increase, a 0% tax increase, investment in technology and instruction, expansion of student learning opportunities and supports, and continued attention to maintenance and improvements. He also reviewed the budget timeline and emphasized that the next major date for the community is the May 19th budget vote. At the 12-minute, 30-second mark, President Orser then turned the meeting over to Assistant Superintendent Ken Silver to begin the line-by-line budget review. Silver explained that the reserve section of the budget references specific line numbers so board members can match the reserve usage to the corresponding expense lines later in that document. He also said that the district used about $1.75 million in reserves in the current year, while this proposed budget uses about $3.9 million, which he said is a little over 11% of the district's reserve total. Around the 14-minute mark, before the board moved to line by line, President Orser asked if trustees had any general questions. Trustee Wise began thanking Superintendent Plotkin and Ken Silver for the format of the budget, saying that it was clearer than in past years and that the Excel version made the comparison easier. He then raised what he described as his main unresolved concern. Wise said that he has questioned the assumption that the district can only raise taxes or keep them flat, but never reduce them. He argued that Carmel has many residents on fixed incomes, and he connected that to broader increases in housing costs, heating costs, and property tax burdens over time. He compared Social Security buying power over the last 30 years to increases in local home values and historic tax levy increases, and said he wanted to see what a 0.1% or 1% tax cut would actually look like. He said that a 0.1% cut would be about $100,000 and that he believed the district should at least examine whether the amount could be found in the budget. Around the 20-minute, 50-second mark, Ken Silver responded that in the current year, at a 0.74% tax increase, represented about $750,000, and that a tenth of a point is about $100,000. He said the current year's increase worked out to about $60 per household annually, and that a $100,000 reduction might equal roughly $1.50 to $2 per month for an average home. Silver said the issue from the administration's perspective is that the tax cut would require using even more reserves, and he warned that reserves will not last indefinitely. Wise then argued that the district's tax revenue picture still reflects increased taxpayer burden over time, and said he wanted the district to consider sharing some relief back with taxpayers. Silver responded that with the new development and shifting assessments do not create extra unrestricted revenue for the district in the way that Wise was describing, but instead can reduce the burden on existing homeowners. Around the 26-minute mark, Vice President John Curzio then joined the discussion. Curzio said he agreed with Trustee Wise's general point about taxpayers and described himself as a steward of taxpayer dollars. He reviewed that the district's history of significant tax levy increases over prior decades and said that those increases were unsustainable and had hurt the community. He said that, in his view, the district cannot tax its way to prosperity. Curzio said that during his years on the board, he has tried to remain true to the promises he made to taxpayers about transparency and careful handling of district finances. He then raised a specific question. He asked what effect a negative tax levy would have on state aid formulas, including BOCES aid, building aid, and transportation aid. Ken Silver then answers, saying that some aid formulas are connected with taxation, and said that reducing taxes could affect high tax aid, transportation aid, and building aid. He added that foundation aid would not be affected. Curzio and Wise then pressed for more than a general answer. They said the board needed actual numbers, or at least estimates, showing whether a small tax cut would have a small aid impact or a much larger one. President Orser asked the two trustees to clarify what they wanted administration to bring back. Curzio said he wanted a modeled scenario showing whether a negative tax levy would create meaningful taxpayer relief or whether lost aid would offset that relief. Wise agreed and said the board needed numbers, not just a yes or no answer. Around the 35-minute, 50-second mark, Trustee Michael Torpy had arrived, and the board moved into the detailed review of the budget pages and line-by-line items. Silver began with the first pages covering revenue and reserves. He said that the district did not cut anything else and simply wanted to reduce the tax levy by 0.1%. It would need to make up the difference with the other $100,000 from reserves. That led into the question on the newly created repair reserve. So at the 38-minute mark, a question was raised about the proposed use of $642,000 from the repair reserve. Ken Silver said the number reflected a percentage of the repair-related lines in the facilities section, specifically lines 172, 178, and 180. He explained that the repair reserve can only be used for certain eligible repairs tied to facilities or equipment purchased through bonding or capital work. He said that not all repairs qualify, using asbestos removal as an example of something that would not qualify under the reserve's rule. He also said no specific project list had been finalized for that repair reserve use. That led to an exchange over whether using the reserve effectively lowers the amount being paid from the general fund for repairs that would otherwise exist in the budget. After several clarifying questions, Silver agreed that using the reserve does not reduce the general fund share of those repair costs. Around the 45-minute, 40-second mark, the board moved into the Board of Education and Business Administration sections. President Orser asked about a small increase in the Board of Education general supplies. Silver said he based that amount on what was actually spent the previous year and said it covered general supplies for board functions, though he did not give a complete breakdown on the spot. The board then began discussing one of the recurring themes of the night, BOCES costs and BOCES savings. Trustee Wise said that as the district continues moving services into BOCES, the board needs to see not only what those services cost, but also what the district is actually saving by using BOCES instead of doing the work in-house or through other vendors. Around the 49-minute, 30-second mark, President Orser then asked about a BOCES risk management line that included a security professional 3 days a week on site, budgeted at roughly $97,693. She said that she did not believe the board had approved that. Ken Silver explained that the item was a placeholder related to the idea of a district-wide security coordinator who would oversee mandates, compliances, drills, and emergency management. President Orser said that the discussion was still in a very early stage and that she was not comfortable with an almost $100,000 placeholder remaining in the budget without a firmer plan. The board then moved to legal costs. Curzio asked whether an increased legal line now better reflected what the district is actually spending. Silver said yes, and that the new number was intended to reflect current realities more accurately. Trustee Wise pointed out that when all related legal lines are considered together, the increase is larger than one line alone suggests. Superintendent Plotkin added that legal work is spread across different specialties, and also said there are savings elsewhere because the district now uses its own legal team for policy review instead of paying BOCES for that function. Around the 54-minute, 30-second mark, at this point, Trustee Jody Douglas left temporarily and said he would return later, and the budget review then continued. At the 56-minute, 20-second mark in facilities and operations, there was a discussion about an increase in BOCES related costs and the broader question of how much the district is actually saving by using BOCES consortium services. Silver said BOCES services had generally gone up by around 11%. And when the conversation turned to copier contracts, Silver gave one specific example. He said copier services that had previously been handled partly outside of BOCES were now fully routed through BOCES, reducing the cost from about $209,000 to $174,000 while making the expense aidable. Wise said that those were the kinds of bottom line comparisons the board wanted to see across the whole budget. Around the 59-minute, 40-second mark, the board then jumped back to the line for the third-party architectural review, which included an added $20,000. Curzio asked what that money would be used for. Silver said that it could help speed the state review process for capital projects already underway, especially if revisions came back and needed to move through state review again. President Orser questioned whether that third-party review would really be necessary if the projects were already with the state. Silver said that if the board did not care about the extra speed, the line could potentially be removed. President Orser then identified that $20,000 as a possible area of savings. Around the 1 hour, 2-minute mark, the board then discussed larger facilities repair lines, including money for renovations of classrooms, hallways, and bathrooms, and another line for unplanned emergency repairs. Silver said the district has an ongoing bathrooms upgrade program and also renovates classrooms by replacing floors, ceilings, and walls. He said that these expenses are mostly materials, while district labor often performs the work. On unplanned emergency repairs, he said that those funds could cover things like heating failures, air conditioning issues, leaks, flooding, fire-related repairs, and other urgent problems. He said the district believed repairs had not been funded adequately in prior years and was trying to build a more realistic number. Around the 1 hour, 5-minute, 10-second mark, a question was then raised about gasoline and diesel costs. Silver said the projected increase reflected the district's estimate of higher fuel prices over the course of the coming year. He also said that while consortium purchasing can provide some discount because of bulk buying, it does not shield the district from broader market price increases. Around the 1 hour, 6-minute mark, as the review continued into technology and BOCES service lines, President Orser and Trustee Wise again asked for a fuller explanation of major increases. Silver said that some of the apparent increase reflected coding changes, including roughly $300,000 in LAN-related costs that had previously been coded elsewhere. He said that the board would receive a more detailed BOCES breakdown before the next meeting, including descriptions and a better line-by-line explanations. Wise said that would be helpful for the public. Around the 1 hour, 10-minute mark, the board also discussed student accident insurance. A trustee noted that the line appeared to increase sharply. Silver said the issue was not just a straightforward increase, but that the current year had been under budgeted because the true cost of the policy had not been understood when the prior budget was built. He also said he was dissatisfied with the current policy because parents had difficulty getting information after student accidents and said that the district was looking into changing policies or carriers. President Orser responded that if the district is paying around $50,000 and there was no one available to talk to families, then that is a problem. Around the 1 hour, 14-minute mark, the board moved into curriculum and school level lines. There was discussion of summer curriculum development and extended school year, or ESY. A line increase connected to the curriculum development was explained as part of an effort to improve summer programming, particularly the ESY program. Later, when summer school salary lines came up, administration clarified that ESY is separate from ordinary summer school or credit recovery. President Orser emphasized that ESY is tied to student needs and IEP requirements, and is designed to prevent regression. At the 1 hour, 17-minute mark, at the school level, the board repeatedly returned to the same concern. Large salary increases do not automatically tell the board whether the district is adding staff, reclassifying staff, or simply seeing contractual or salary step changes. At the George Fisher Middle School, there was a discussion of an increase in administration salary. Administration said that the increase reflected a dean position combined with contract and staffing changes. From there, the focus shifted to building level staffing at the elementary schools. At the 1 hour, 25-minute mark, President Orser, Trustee Wise, and others began pressing for clearer information on FTE counts, teaching assistants, RTI staffing, and monitors. They said that the board needed to know not just how much a line item had increased, but how many staff were in that line in the current year versus the proposed year, and what actual services those staff increases represented. At the Matthew Patterson Elementary School and Kent Elementary School, the board discussed increases in teaching assistants and asked whether those increases were tied to RTI, classroom support, reclassification of positions, or something else. Silver said that the district would provide a more detailed explanation, including current and projected RTI numbers. At the 1 hour, 31-minute mark, the board also discussed dual language and bilingual staffing. Vice President Curzio asked whether certain dual language teaching positions were being counted twice after being moved from another budget line. Silver said the positions were not being double counted, but instead had been shifted from another line. There was then a discussion about whether the district's bilingual program as a state mandate. After some back and forth, President Orser stated that New York requires school districts to provide bilingual education programming when there are enough English language learners in the same grade speaking the same home language, and that in this context, the district's dual language staffing was being treated as required. The board asked administration to confirm that explanation. At the 1 hour, 36-minute mark, the board then returned to staffing increases in elementary schools. President Orser focused on large changes in teaching assistant lines, especially at the Kent Elementary and Matthew Patterson level. She said it was difficult to understand why a building with fewer total students could still be seeing multiple added support positions without a fuller explanation of student needs and service structure. The board asked administration to provide current projected RTI data along with clear staffing explanations. The board also raised similar questions about monitors, including whether previously approved monitor positions had ever been fully filled and whether new openings should be added if old ones had been hard to staff. Silver said administration would provide more information. At the 1 hour, 50-minute mark on the next page, President Orser then asked about a line for social emotional curriculum that had been removed. Silver said the district was discontinuing that program and replacing it with something else. It was then clarified that although money had been budgeted in the current year, the district had not actually used it, which is why the line was now zeroed out. At the 1 hour, 53-minute mark, the board then moved to universal pre-K. Vice President Curzio asked whether the state's increased UPK funding would still solve the shortfall the district had experienced this year, and whether it gave the district more stability for the future. Ken Silver explained that this year the district had been receiving about $5,461 per child, while some provider costs were significantly higher. He said the state was now indicating that UPK funding would move to a minimum of $10,000 per child, and that everything the district had heard from the state education department suggested that that would happen. Silver said the district had not yet finalized next year's contracts because it was waiting for a final confirmation from the state. Superintendent Plotkin said that the district did not currently foresee the same kind of shortfall if the new funding goes through as expected. Silver also said current UPK enrollment was around 148 students, and that the number of community-based organizations involved could change depending on actual enrollment. Plotkin added that UPK is valuable, not only because it helps children academically, but because it can also help the district identify student needs earlier. At the 2 hour, 5-minute mark, the board then drifted briefly into a broader discussion about district space, whether some UPK classes could potentially be brought back into district buildings and whether fifth grade should be housed differently. President Orser eventually pulled the conversation back to the budget review. At the 2-hour, 7-minute mark, Trustee Wise then took a moment to acknowledge that he had asked many questions, but said he appreciated the administration's work on the budget and the format of the presentation. Later in the meeting, the board discussed counselor and social worker allocations, and there was a question about whether counselors are actually working and whether the A-school staffing is being represented clearly in the budget. The administration said more detailed information would be provided, including a counselor distribution and the role of the A-school in those allocations. At the 2-hour, 39-minute mark, the board then turned to athletics and the facilities lines, including the line that included $40,000 for Carmel High School baseball field repair. Vice President Curzio asked why that line remained in the budget when a similar amount had been allocated in the current year, but the work did not move forward. He also said that experts and attorneys had indicated that previously discussed approach would not actually solve the baseball field issue. Ken Silver said the district was still trying to improve the field, but acknowledged that the prior approach was not the real fix, and said he did not have a full answer for why the amount remained in the budget in the same form. The line was later mentioned again as a possible area to cut. Around the 3-hour mark in transportation, the board discussed route efficiency, software, GPS integration, and staffing. Questions were raised about a BOCES-related routing service and whether the district was paying for outside help to do work that should already be supported by software it owns. Administration said the district is using the software it already has, but that the BOCES service was intended to help improve routing efficiency, connect routing with GPS data, and prepare for changes related to the high school start time. Trustee Wise said this also raised a broader question of whether the district should be investing more in internal training and efficiency rather than paying for outside support every year. There was also a discussion of student ridership, driver shortages, route structure, and whether those factors could be managed more efficiently. Around the 3-hour, 6-minute mark, the board then discussed the upcoming school resource officer contract. Trustee Wise said the open question was whether historically shared SRO costs were now becoming fully billed to the district for additional officers. Administration said negotiations were still ongoing, but that the district had been told the first SRO assigned to a school is effectively subsidized through the structure of the arrangement, while additional officers would likely be billed at full cost. Wise said that raised concerns about how much of an officer's workday is actually spent in the school if the district is paying 100% of that person's cost. President Orser said negotiations were still active and asked that the board put a pin in that discussion for the moment because the placeholder could still change. Around the 3-hour, 11-minute mark in debt service, the board discussed savings on principal and interest. Trustee Wise noted that the district appeared to be realizing about $162,000 in savings and asked whether that assumed the land sale would go through. Silver said yes, it did. Silver also said that carrying a certain amount of debt can affect state aid, and that one reason districts often take on new capital work when old debt falls off is because that debt structure can interact with aid and tax neutrally. He said that because the district is now using debt reduction to help support the operating budget, a future bond for projects such as athletic fields would no longer be as easily described as tax neutral. Wise responded that he did not want the district to begin from the assumption that it must always replace old borrowing with new borrowing, and said he preferred identifying actual needs first and then calculating cost. President Orser responded that the district does have real facilities needs, including the track, football field, baseball field, and auditorium. Around the 3-hour, 31-minute mark, Vice President Curzio asked about the Director of Facilities line being zeroed out. He asked whether the board should receive a formal resolution to abolish the vacant position if the district is no longer budgeting for it. Silver said the board could do that if they wanted. Curzio then asked whether there were any ghost positions in the budget. Silver said that there was only one. Around the 3-hour, 42-minute mark, as the budget review wrapped up, President Orser asked Superintendent Plotkin to recap the list of issues that administration would need to come back with. The recap included a more specific answer with numbers on the effect of a negative tax levy on state aid, a fuller explanation of what is included in Board of Education supplies, a clear district-wide picture of how much the district gives BOCES and how much it is saving through BOCES arrangements, more detail on teaching assistants and RTI staffing, especially at Kent Elementary School, more information on monitors by building and how they are used, a better understanding of the distribution and purchase of graphic calculators, clarification on the difference between library aides and library assistants, more detail on high school counselors, including where they work and how the A school factors in, possible removal of the $40,000 baseball field repair line, and more information on short buses, bus driver shortages, routes, and the percentage of leased buses. Around the 3-hour 45-minute mark, Vice President Curzio then added a few more points. He said administration should also look again at the $97,693 security placeholder for a 3-day-a-week professional, and he referenced possible tightening in some transportation lines as well. He said that if there is no negative effect on state aid, some of those items together could represent meaningful savings for taxpayers. He also asked for the district to separate the Washington, D.C. trip costs from ordinary field trip costs at the middle school, and asked for more information on RTI trends, including whether those numbers are increasing, decreasing, or projected to change. Around the 3-hour 46-minute mark, President Orser then thanked the administration and district clerk for their time and work that went into the meeting and the budget presentation. Superintendent Plotkin also thanked the board for closely reviewing the budget and said that the questions being asked were useful because they pushed the administration to re-examine long-standing assumptions and practices. He also said that next year administration would like to begin this detailed work earlier in the calendar. And then the meeting was adjourned at 3 hours, 47 minutes, and 30 seconds. So just real quick, I wanted to just give my opinion. First, I want to say thank you to all administration and all board members who were present. I know you guys work very hard. I'll be honest, I don't always clearly follow this. A lot of this is outside the scope of practice in my noggin here. So having some of these lines broken down simplistically is super helpful for me as a layperson, as somebody who does not understand budgets and taxes and all that jazz. So thank you truly for taking the time to break all this down for us. I want to give a big shout out to Assistant Superintendent Ken Silver. I think you've been doing a phenomenal job since you started with us. I don't think the budget has ever been more clear before in years past, and for me, at least, that's truly appreciated. I'm sure other stakeholders feel the same. Thank you to Superintendent Plotkin. This is your first year at that table during a budget work session. I'm sure you had a lot of fun. You always do. And I appreciate you jotting down those notes, and can't wait to hear the answers that you come up with for those recap questions. I guess my biggest opinion on all of this has kind of been my opinion from the get-go. And again, this is definitely coming from a place of ignorance because I don't understand what goes into all of this on a day-to-day. But we pay a lot of money in salaries, and then I feel like we argue about the stupidest shit sometimes because we're so worried about making sure those contracts are paid out. And it's really heart-wrenching. As somebody that grew up in this town, I went to the school district K through 12, and now I have 3 kids in this district. It's truly uncomfortable to see how much of our budget goes towards salaries. And when you break it down simplistically, really nothing goes back to the kids. So I do appreciate this board and this administration for really trying to figure out a way to keep our taxes at least from rising. I don't know if we'll be able to get that negative tax increase that Trustee Wise brought up. I think that would be great, but I don't know if that's logical. But to see taxes go up yearly for the most part, and I feel like our kids get less and less every year. It's very, what's the word? What's the appropriate word? It's gross. I'll put it plainly. It's just gross. And there's been more than a few times I felt, kind of disgusted by this district. Not necessarily the Board of Education, not necessarily administration, but just kind of how the whole bureaucratic bullshit system comes together and dysfunctionally works. Somehow we've made it work, but I do hope that board members from here on out and administration from here on out really start working hard to maybe trying to lower taxes, or at the very least not raising taxes, and figuring out what we can do to get our kids more, because they do deserve it. So that wraps up today's budget work session recap. Budget work sessions may not come with the same kind of headlines as a regular board meeting, but they matter just as much, because this is where the numbers get questioned, the priorities get challenged, and the details start coming into focus before the public vote. These decisions affect our schools, our kids, our taxpayers, and our community. If this breakdown helped you, share it with someone who wants to better understand what's actually happening in the budget process. For full episodes, updates, and ways to connect, visit linktr.ee/carmelunfiltered. And if you have questions, concerns, or topics you like covered in a future episode, message me or email me at carmelunfiltered@gmail.com. I'm Samantha Fulling. This is Carmel Unfiltered, my platform, my perspective. Until next time.